I moved to a quiet suburban neighborhood a few months ago. I was hoping for a fresh start after my breakup. The streets were neat, and the houses looked identical, almost like they came out of a magazine. I thought the peace would help me focus on my graphic design work. But I was wrong. The first few nights were eerily quiet. I appreciated the stillness, but it quickly turned strange. On my second night, I woke up to soft tapping on the wall next to me. I thought maybe it was the house settling, but the sound wouldn't stop. It was like someone was knocking, but gently. I checked the wall and the window. Nothing was there. I went back to bed and told myself it was nothing. Then it got worse. The tapping turned into rhythmic thumping. I started to hear muffled voices that I couldn't quite make out. Each night, those noises crept closer to me. I shut my laptop and sat in silence, my heart racing. What was happening? My focus was gone. I started to watch my neighbor, an older man. He roamed his yard at odd hours. He paced back and forth, mumbling to someone invisible. I felt uneasy, but I couldn't look away. One evening, I noticed shadows moving behind his curtains. They were too small to be an adult. My stomach dropped. I squeezed my eyes shut. This couldn't be real. I decided to knock on his door one evening. I took a deep breath, then knocked firmly. My hand felt the cold wood. I waited. No answer. Maybe he didn't hear me. I was being silly, I thought. I went back to my couch. I tried to drown out the noise with work, but it only got louder. Voices filled the house, laughter echoing when it should have been quiet. My nights turned into a blur. I couldn't tell when I was dreaming or awake. I would catch glimpses of that older man outside, looking restless. I felt my friends wouldn't understand. When I told them about my strange encounters, they laughed. They brushed it off. I saw pity in their eyes. Was I losing it? The nights dragged on, and I couldn't shake that feeling. Each time I closed my eyes, I felt a weight on my chest. Then one night I snapped. I marched right up to his door again, ready to confront him. I banged on the door, demanding to know what was going on. Just as I was about to give up, I heard a voice behind me, clear as day. "Why are you here?" it asked. I turned around, heart pounding, and nobody was there. The world felt like it was spinning. No one was around. Had I imagined it? I stumbled back, shocked. Couldn't breathe. I heard laughter again. It sounded like children. I glanced back at the neighbor's house. The shadows danced behind the curtains. I ran inside, locking the door behind me. I never felt so alone. What in that neighborhood was happening? I'd moved for solitude, but I didn't know how to escape this. I just wanted peace, but I was surrounded by whispers. And I'll never forget that voice. The next day, I woke up to gray skies. It matched my mood perfectly. I was exhausted, but I knew I had to do something about the situation. I couldn't keep ignoring the strange events. Maybe my neighbor held the answers. I took a deep breath and grabbed my phone. I decided to look him up online. I searched for his name, but all I found were a few public records. He had no social media presence. It was odd, but then again, maybe he preferred his privacy. I felt unsettled by the silence surrounding him. I needed to see him again. That evening, I approached my front door and found a note slipped under it. My hands shook as I picked it up. It was written in messy handwriting, and I quickly scanned the words. "Leave us alone." My stomach twisted in knots. Who was this? Was he talking about those shadows? Or the voices I kept hearing? I ran my fingers over the note, trying to make sense of it. I looked out the window towards his house. He was out there again, pacing, muttering. I barely slept that night. The tapping resumed, louder than before. It felt like 1,000 fingers danced on my walls. I grabbed my phone and took a deep breath. I had to face this. I crept outside, heart hammering in my chest, and made my way next door. I stood in front of his door, hesitation gripping me. I lifted my hand to knock, but then I noticed something on the ground. A small, frayed toy lay nestled between the tampered leaves of his porch. It was a stuffed bear, worn and very much loved, with one eye missing. A chill ran down my spine. Why would a toy be out here? I looked around, anxious to see if anyone was watching. But there was only silence. I picked the toy up. Felt wrong to touch it, but I couldn't just leave it there. I hesitated a moment longer, then turned back toward the house. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash from within. The noise shook the ground beneath me. Heart racing, I knocked on his door, shouting, "Are you okay?" No answer. Panic flooded my veins. I turned the handle and realized it was unlocked. My heart pounded as I pushed the door open. Inside, everything was in disarray. Furniture was overturned, curtains torn. Dust hung in the air like a ghost. "Hello?" I called out, stepping cautiously inside, clutching the stuffed bear tightly. No reply came. The laughter echoed again, but it wasn't just laughter. It sounded like a party, voices mixed with giggles. Confused, I ventured further into the house. I had to find him, and that's when I saw it. A door at the back of the hallway. It was slightly ajar, the laughter spilling out like a twisted invitation. I hesitated but felt drawn to it, a mix of curiosity and terror pulling me forward. What lay beyond that door? I stood at the threshold, the laughter growing louder. I took a deep breath, pushing the door open. What I discovered changed everything. I stepped into the room, and my breath hitched in my throat. It was a stark contrast to the chaos I had just navigated. The space was impossibly vibrant, filled with colorful balloons and streamers. A table was set up with what looked like a small cake covered in candles. But it was the figures gathered around the table that froze me in place. There were children, about 5 or 6 of them, clapping and laughing as if they were celebrating a birthday. Only they didn't seem to notice me. Their faces were pale and drawn, with wide eyes that glimmered strangely in the low light. I felt a chill run through me as their laughter turned to whispers, almost conspiratorial, and shadows danced around their feet. I wanted to turn and run, but my body felt paralyzed. What is happening? I thought, heart racing. I blinked, trying to make sense of the scene. The children looked up suddenly, all together, their smiles slipping into frowns. The one in the front, a girl with tangled hair, pointed directly at me. "Leave him alone," she shouted. Her voice held a strange authority, and it sent a shiver down my spine. Just then, I caught a glimpse of a figure behind the kids. It was him, the neighbor. He was pale, too, and his eyes darted around like a cornered animal. "Don't," he yelled, his voice frantic. "Get away from her." Panic surged in me. Who was he trying to protect? The children turned back toward him, annoyance flickering across their faces, and I knew I had interrupted something that wasn't meant to be seen. I stumbled back toward the door, fueled by fear. The moment I turned my back, the laughter surged again, more sinister, echoing in my ears. I burst back into the hallway and slammed the door shut behind me. The laughter faded into an eerie silence. I leaned against the wall, panting, desperately trying to piece everything together. None of it made sense. The toy bear in my hand felt heavy. Had I stumbled into something supernatural? Or was it all just a trick of the mind? I stepped outside, looking for any clue about what had just unfolded. Then I noticed something scrawled on the wall beside the door, words smeared in a dark substance. My heart raced again as I read it. "They need him." A lump formed in my throat. Who needed him? Why were those children there? I turned to leave, but a sudden noise froze me in place. A crash came from within the house, followed by a voice, a deep, rumbling growl that didn't belong to my neighbor. My heart skipped. Whatever was in there with him was not friendly. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't leave him alone, not with that thing waiting. So, I glanced towards my own house and then back at the open door, trying to decide my next move. The toy bear felt wrong in my hands, like it was weighing me down. Then, resolute, I stepped back toward the door, my heart racing. I had to know what was going on. I had to help. It might be the worst decision of my life, but I was already too deep. That growl echoed again, and I pushed the door open, determined to confront whatever lay inside. As I crossed the threshold, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the darkness inside the house had a weight of its own. I glanced around, the warm glow of the party decorations now feeling out of place amid the growing unease. The laughter, once joyous, had morphed into a faint, haunting echo, as if it were coming from another world. I stepped into the living room, my senses primed for danger. My eyes darted around, taking in every detail. The laughter was gone, replaced by a chilling stillness. The children were gone, too, leaving only the scattered balloons that bobbed gently against the walls. The cake on the table, untouched, looked strangely ominous in the dimness. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. There was nothing but silence in response. I could feel sweat bead on my forehead. Then I heard it again, a deep growl that crawled from the darkened hallway beyond the living room. It was low and guttural, rumbling like distant thunder. I took a cautious step forward, edging toward the sound. My heart pounded in my chest. Somewhere inside me, a voice was screaming to turn back. I crept toward the hallway, feeling the cold tiles beneath my bare feet. As I moved closer, I noticed a faint light flickering at the end of the corridor. It danced against the walls, creating eerie shapes that twisted and turned. The growl deepened, sounding more like a warning. Then I saw it, a shadow shifting just beyond the edge of the light. It was larger than a child, but less defined, as if obscured by smoke. Instinctively, I took a step back, my breath hitching in my throat again. Just then, the neighbor appeared, stumbling out of a room further down the hallway. His face was pallid and smeared with dark streaks, eyes wide with terror. "You shouldn't have come back," he rasped, grabbing my arm. "Something's in here with you," I exclaimed, trying to shake his grip. He shook his head, looking panicked. "You don't understand. It's not what you think." His voice dropped to a whisper. "They're angry." Before I could respond, the growl escalated, reverberating through the halls like a choking sound. The flickering light intensified, revealing more of the lurking shadow. I could see now that it had eyes gleaming and predatory. "I need to get you out of here." He tugged at my arm, pulling me back toward the front door, but I resisted. My curiosity battled against the fear. I couldn't leave without knowing what was after him. Suddenly, the shadow lunged forward, a blur of dark movement. Instinct kicked in, and I stumbled backward, catching myself against the wall. My heart raced as I shouted, "What is it?" That S when I saw it more clearly, long limbs and jagged features, like a twisted version of the children I had just witnessed. I felt the weight of their laughter, the echoes haunting every inch of the room. "Run!" he yelled, but I couldn't move. The thing opened its mouth wide, an abyss of darkness ready to swallow us whole. Everything went dark. I felt a sudden rush of air, cold and heavy, as if the very breath of the house had turned against me. The darkness pinned me down, blurring my senses. Then a flicker returned, not strong enough to illuminate the full scene but enough to outline the shape that loomed in front of me. I gasped, instinctively clamping my eyes shut, hoping this wasn't real. But the growl vibrated through me, a sound that felt primal and hungry. Signs of life were stripped from the space, the laughter replaced by dread. I forced my eyes open, bracing myself against the chill of the wall, my heart pounding louder with each flicker of light. "Don't look at it," my neighbor shouted, his voice cracking. I glanced at him, seeing his terror mirrored in the pupils of his wide eyes. "It'll draw you in. You have to close your eyes and run." But my feet felt anchored to the floor, caught in the pull of the creature. I could see it now, more defined with each flicker, a collage of nightmares woven together. Its limbs were impossibly long, twisted at odd angles, and its face, a grotesque parody of childhood innocence, grinned at me, toothy and unmoving. The neighbor surged forward, yanking me from my stupor. "This way." He sprinted down the hall, pulling me with him. I fumbled, stumbling over discarded toys and crumpled decorations, disoriented as I tried to keep pace. I wanted to look back, to see how close it was, but I kept my focus ahead and tried not to breathe. We reached a door at the end of the corridor. Before he could turn the handle, I heard scratching behind us, nails against the wood, unsettling and relentless. My stomach twisted. The growl morphed into a high-pitched cackle, echoing from the depths as if a chorus was joining in, urging us back. Now! He pushed me through the door and slammed it shut behind us. We were in a small storage room, filled with dust and old furniture, and the striking stillness felt almost deafening. I pressed my back against the door, my body trembling as I braced against it. What was that thing? I gasped, trying to catch my breath. Why did it go after you? He leaned against a stacked pile of boxes, his face pale, breath coming in ragged gasps. It's a curse, he said finally, voice low and trembling. The children, they're all part of it. They're angry because we forgot them. The mention of the children sent a chill creeping up my spine. My mind raced back to the abandoned party, to the faded decorations that seemed to whisper secrets. Forgot them? What do you mean? Let me explain, he said, eyes darting to the door. But we might not have time. If it doesn't find us here, it'll track us. Just then, I heard it again, a thud against the door, followed by that horrid laugh, echoing through the small space. The wood creaked as if the creature was testing its strength. My gut twisted. What do we do? In that moment of panic, the realization hit me hard. Whatever that creature was, it was connected to the children. Somehow, we had unwittingly stepped into something far darker than I had imagined. That realization settled in, heavy and foreboding, just as the door cracked open, splintering the wood. A sliver of darkness seeped through, and I could see those predatory eyes shining bright, like two stars in a vast black void. I took a step back, my mind racing. I felt something cold tugging at my heart, a looming understanding that this was only the beginning. The door burst inward with a violent clang, catching the edge of my shoulder and throwing me to the ground. I blinked rapidly, the sudden dim light from the hallway closing in as I scrambled back against the wall, my breath quickening. No! Close your eyes! My neighbor shouted, but I was frozen, the terror paralyzing. I could feel the creature looming over me just beyond the threshold. I could see that terrible grin grow wider, and its elongated fingers reach toward me, their tips scraping the floor as if to draw me into its maw of darkness. In a flash, my neighbor lunged forward, propelling himself into the hallway even as I screamed. I shielded my eyes, waiting for the inevitable sound. I heard a thud, a terrible crash, and then his voice, now filled with screams of horror. The cackling crescendoed and fell silent. I felt the weight of dread settle around me. I couldn't just stay here. I had to move, to escape whatever nightmare had consumed him. I stood up, my pulse thundering in my ears as I glanced toward the open door. The hallway was dark, and I could barely make out the shape of his body on the floor, but he wasn't moving. What do I do? What do I do? I whispered to myself, my thoughts racing. The memories of children, forgotten laughter, and whispering shadows slid through my mind. Was he telling the truth? Had we actually done something to summon this thing? I needed a plan. My gut instinct screamed at me to run, but I didn't know where to go or what was safe. Then I remembered the window. It was only a small storage room, but I knew there should be enough space for me to squeeze through. Barely glancing back, I rushed toward the window, my hands trembling as I fumbled with the latch. It creaked open, and I climbed halfway onto the sill, peering into the void outside. It was dark, but the moonlight illuminated a narrow alley behind the house. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching. I whipped my head around. The creature was gliding back, its body shifting and contorting as it moved. I gritted my teeth and kicked the screen out of the window, heart racing at the thought of it lunging at me. Just as I pulled myself through, I heard that awful laugh echoing behind me once more, louder and closer than before. I dropped down into the alley, the cold air rushing around me like a tidal wave. I landed hard on the ground, gasping as I struggled to my feet. Looking back at the window, I saw a figure emerge. It wasn't just any figure. It was my neighbor, but he looked different. The innocence in his eyes was gone, replaced by a chilling emptiness. His limbs appeared jerkier, distorted, as if he had become part of the creature himself. "Help me!" he cried out, his voice a haunting echo of the man I had known. "You can't leave me in this place. My heart broke at the sight, but fear gripped me more tightly. I had to keep moving. I turned and stumbled down the alley, glancing over my shoulder. The air felt heavy, and dread coiled inside me. I could feel eyes watching me from the shadows, waiting for the moment I'd stop running. As I reached the end of the alley, I spotted an old streetlight flickering ahead, and then everything went dark. The silence enveloped me, swallowing my every thought. Bile rose in my throat, a knowing dread slithering up my spine. Just as quickly, the light came back, but this time it illuminated faces I recognized, face after face of children, lost and unrelenting, staring into the darkness. I froze, panic clenched around my throat. That S when I saw it. The shadows were moving closer, shifting like ink across the ground. The children started to whisper words I couldn't understand, but their eyes held promises of the unspeakable. Couldn't breathe. The faces in the shadows were too close, too familiar. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs felt heavy, rooted in place. Each child's gaze seemed to pierce through me, searching for something lost. Then I remembered my neighbor, his twisted form, pleading for help just moments ago. That thought jolted me awake, and I sprinted away from the ghostly congregation of children. I had to escape this nightmarish scene. I only hoped my feet would find the strength to carry me. I stumbled out of the pool of light, darting down the empty street. The shadows seemed to stretch and cling to me, trying to pull me back, but I focused on the distant glow of another streetlight ahead. It flickered, providing a beacon, a scrap of hope. I was desperate to reach it. As I ran, my mind raced. Who were those children? Did they die here? Were they lost like my neighbor? I churned through the questions, knowing answers would do me little good right now. I couldn't think about that. I just needed to keep moving. The streetlight flickered again, sputtering before illuminating a strange figure in the distance. I froze, a name echoing in my head. Marisol. She was the girl from the neighborhood, the one they said disappeared months ago. Her absence had been thick in the air, yet here she was, standing limply against a fence, her eyes shrouded in shadow. "Help me, please," she called, her voice sounding both urgent and chilling. Desperation tightened in my chest as I hesitated. "They'll come for you too. You have to come closer." "No," I shouted, stepping back. My instincts screamed warnings. I couldn't let myself be drawn in. But her eyes, empty and yet full of pleading, made it difficult to look away. Then the shadows writhed again, morphing into something larger, looming behind Marisol as if ready to devour her whole. Fear surged through me, pushing me deeper into my thoughts about escape. I wouldn't fall for the same fate. I had to get away from everyone, every face, every whisper. As I turned to run, I heard a laughter, echoing and mischievous, lurking behind me. The sound was unmistakable. It was the barn door slamming shut in the real world. The schoolyard jesters, the fun we once had, until it all faded into whispers of a past I could barely remember. Just then, a sudden gust of wind swept down the street, wrapping around me with a biting chill. And in that moment, I caught a glimpse of something just beyond the darkness. There was a door not like any exit I'd known, but a warped, bent frame that flickered between worlds. Something inside me prodded to move toward it, but fear held me back. "Get away from there," I muttered to myself. Was I supposed to confront whatever lay on the other side? My throat felt tight. My legs threatened to buckle. I could hear the whispers now, clearer but still indecipherable, as if the shadows wanted me to understand. Then, I noticed the corner of my vision, crawling shapes, silhouettes of children moving in rhythm with the wind. They were leaving me, drifting towards the door, beckoning me with gestures that felt oddly familiar. I wasn't ready to follow. As I shifted my gaze back to the door, it expanded. A compelling force drew me closer, the laughter mixing with more urgent whispers. That S when a hand shot out of the shadows behind me, grabbing my arm with a grip like iron. I gasped and twisted, heart racing. "Where do you think you're going?" A voice hissed, breaking through the suffocating air. I was too late. I turned and found myself staring into the empty eyes of my neighbor, now completely lost to whatever darkness had consumed him. "Don't go there," he warned, but his warning felt more like a threat, as if he was both my savior and my demise. My heart pounded as I realized I had no idea who was left to trust. I pulled away from his grip, panic surging in my chest. My neighbor's eyes were a void, swallowing any hope I had left. "Let me go," I shouted, but my voice trembled. He didn't move as I backed away, still anchored by some invisible thread to the door that loomed behind me. "Listen to me," he urged, his voice faltering. Shadows flickered across his face, and for a split second, I thought I saw a glimpse of the man he used to be, the neighbor I once knew. "They're not what you think. You can't follow them." "What do you mean?" I stammered. "Who are they?" He opened his mouth, but before he could answer, the laughter from the shadows grew louder, echoing like a taunt. I could see the children again, their figures dancing toward the warped door. It was as if they were playing a game, and I was the unwilling pawn. "Stop!" I yelled, but the joy in their voices only intensified, morphing into something sinister. Each clap of their hands felt like a drumbeat signaling my impending doom. "Get away from here!" My neighbor shouted again, his voice rising above the chaos, the tension thickening the air. "They'll take you too." I needed to make a choice. Either I ran away from this twisted recollection of my past, or I confronted a darkness I didn't fully understand. My instincts screamed to flee, but another part of me was curious. What would happen if I crossed that threshold? But before I could decide, a cold wind swept through the street, extinguishing the nearby streetlights one by one. Darkness engulfed us, leaving only the warped door dimly glowing in the shadows. "Go," he urged, desperation evident in his voice. "You don't want to know what's on the other side. It's not just memories. It's a trap." The ground shifted beneath me, the laughter ceased, and a sudden stillness settled over the street. A figure emerged from the door, tall and cloaked in darkness, and I felt my breath hitch. "Come join us." It beckoned, its voice smooth yet chilling, wrapping around me like a shroud. The whispers of the children beckoned again, now more insistent, nearly drowning out my neighbor's frantic warnings. They promised me games, laughter, and a world where fears didn't exist. Then I felt the ground tremble beneath me once more, and in that moment of hesitation, my neighbor lunged forward, breaking the spell. "Run," he shouted, his voice cracking with urgency. I hesitated, torn between the safety of the known and the alluring promise of the unknown. Just then, I spotted movement from the corner of my eye. A glimmer of light flickered in the shadows, a flash of unexpected reality seeping through the darkness. That's when I saw it, a small, crumpled photograph lying in the dirt, half buried beneath leaves. I reached down instinctively, but my neighbor jerked my arm. "Forget it. We have to go now." But something in my gut told me that the photograph was a piece of the puzzle I couldn't ignore. My hesitation cost me precious seconds. The cloaked figure took a step forward, and the shadows recoiled as they followed its lead. Shadows that felt all too familiar, shadows of children I had grown up with. A chilling realization washed over me, and before I could process it, the eerie laughter erupted once more, and the darkness lurched forward. I knew I had only moments to escape. I couldn't stand there any longer. With a swift tug, I broke free from my neighbor's grip and ran toward the photograph on the ground. My heart pounded as the laughter turned into shouts, the shadows clawing their way toward me. Just as I bent down to grasp the photograph, a hand shot out of the darkness, grabbing at my ankle. I yanked away, scrambling to my feet, feeling the cold breath of whoever or whatever was behind me. I gripped the photograph tightly, my mind racing with questions I didn't have time to answer. I had to get out, no matter the cost. I sprinted down the street, the photograph clutched tightly in my hand. The laughter faded behind me, but the shadows still lunged, snapping at my heels. The image of my past pulled me back, but I refused to look. I couldn't dwell on it. I just had to run. As I navigated the familiar streets, my heart hammered against my ribcage. I bumped into a lamppost, nearly losing my balance. The world hadn't changed, but everything felt wrong. Each flickering bulb cast long, stretching shadows that twisted and swayed like they had a life of their own. I stumbled into my front yard, breathless. I didn't take time to catch my breath before yanking the door open. Rushing inside, I slammed it shut, locking it tight. The sound of the latch falling still echoed in my ears as I leaned against it, gasping for air. The photograph slipped from my grip and landed face up on the floor. I crouched down to see it clearly. It was an old snapshot of a group of children, me among them. We were all smiling, carefree. But behind us, in the background, there was something else. A shadow loomed in the distance, barely visible. I squinted at it, dread creeping up my spine. "What is this?" I murmured. The playful faces contrasted with the creeping darkness, making my skin crawl. Suddenly, the familiar laughter returned, echoing from the other side of the door as if they had followed me home. It was taunting, mocking. The memories slammed into me. I remembered those carefree days, but also the whispers, the strange occurrences that made me avoid playing outside. "Stop it!" I shouted, clenching my fists. The laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. I stood still, absorbing the heaviness that settled around me. I had to make sense of it all. Just as I began to gather my thoughts, my phone rang. The sound cut through the silence, causing me to jump. I quickly grabbed it from the coffee table, hoping it was someone who could help. It was my neighbor, the one who had tried to warn me. "You need to listen to me," he said, his voice frantic. "They're not going to let you go that easily. You must." "Who are they?" I interrupted, my voice shaking. "What do they want?" "They're drawn to fear. And they know you've seen them now. You have to find a way to resist, or they'll take you just like the others." With a sickening chill, I recalled the children from the photograph, their smiles, their joy, their shadows. "What happened to them?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "They're trapped, just like you almost were. If you want to help them, you need to find the source. The photograph, it's a clue. You have to go back." "Back where?" I stuttered. The thought of returning to that door terrified me. The darkness was pervading even my home now. "Back to where it all began," he said softly. I knew exactly where he meant. The woods where we used to play. The very place I had tried to forget. I glanced at the photograph once more as the laughter resumed outside. More menacing this time. "I can't go back. I want tea." "Then it will never stop," he warned. His voice a panicky whisper before the line went dead. Breath hitching. I stared at the door, now trembling under the weight of their laughter. Fleeing this time wouldn't be an option. I felt the pull of the photograph again, and a new understanding lit inside me. I had to confront this darkness, no matter the cost. Taking a deep breath, I made my decision. I would return to that door, back to the woods, back to where it all began. The shadows were waiting. I felt the weight of dread settle in my stomach as I turned to face the door. I had no choice. I had to confront whatever darkness had been haunting me since I moved into this neighborhood. Grabbing the photograph and tucking it safely in my pocket, I opened the door and stepped outside. The cool night air felt sharp against my skin, awakening every sense. The dim light from the street lamps threw eerie shapes on the ground, and I could hear the faint echoes of laughter, just as I had before. With every step I took toward the woods, the laughter grew louder, more chaotic. Shadows loomed over the path, twisting and shifting in the dimness. I forced myself to quicken my pace, trying to drown out the unsettling chorus of whispers. Uncertainty gripped my heart, but the urgency of the moment propelled me forward. The entrance to the woods was shrouded in darkness, the gnarled branches reaching out like fingers, urging me to turn back. But I pressed on, recalling the warmth of childhood memories mixed with the poignant sorrow of those trapped in shadows. There, among the trees, lay the heart of the mystery, the place where laughter once rang out without fear. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the shadows danced around me, whispering secrets, both enticing and frightening. I reached a clearing that stood in the moonlight. In the center lay remnants of an old treehouse, long forgotten, and memories flickered like fireflies in the dark. Dread seeped into my bones as a realization struck me: this was their playground, a haven now buried beneath sorrow. Footsteps behind me made me spin around, my heart racing. I expected to see my neighbor or something worse, but the clearing remained silent. Still, the feeling of being watched lingered, 1,000 gazes pricking at my back. I squinted at a gnarled tree near the edge of the clearing. Something was etched into its bark, words that warned, yet drew memories. Forget us not. Leaning closer, I tried to make sense of it. Could the children still be connected to this place? What did they want me to remember? Just as the thought settled, I heard their laughter again, but it was different this time, faint, echoing in the still night air. I darted toward the sound, desperation fueling my every footfall. I stumbled into another clearing, one illuminated by a soft glow. The source of the light drew me in, and I felt an inexplicable pull toward it. There, I found a pitiful collection of forgotten toys and the remnants of childhood laughter, a small makeshift memorial of lost innocence. Among them lay my own frayed teddy bear from long ago, the same one I had run away from. My breath caught as the whispers intensified. Join us, they beckoned. I felt their energy wrap around me, drawing me into my own memories. Visions flashed before me, playing with the other kids. The joy that once filled these woods, and then it shifted to a darker memory. The day we all stopped playing out here, when shadows crept in, and the joy turned to fear. Help us! The voices surged, becoming frantic. All at once, I understood. They weren't seeking vengeance. They were stuck, waiting to be remembered, to be free. I dropped to my knees, clenching the photograph in my hand, feeling the weight of their plight. I won't forget you, I whispered. Promise. There was a sudden hush, as if the very woods held its breath. The air felt charged, heavy with something indescribable. Then a flicker caught my eye. The darkness around the treehouse began to swirl, first like mist, then coalescing into shapes, tiny figures, no taller than my waist, slowly coalescing before my eyes. Their faces were, as I remembered, pale, eyes wide with unshed tears, smiles stretched tight. Thank you, they whispered, their voices soft yet echoing through the trees. I could see the flickering lights of their laughter woven in with the shadows. They were still here, but they needed me to let go. But as the shadows shimmered around them, I felt a heaviness in the air, pulling me from the brightness. Suddenly, my neighbor burst through the underbrush, his face pale. You shouldn't be here, he called out, his voice desperate and panicked. But it was too late. The children began to ascend into the light, shimmering in the moonbeams, their giggles turning to a chorus of joy. However, something dark surged around us, an ominous shadow spiraled forth, as if angered by our interference. The darkness twisted toward the children, a funneling vortex of rage and despair. Get back, I yelled, and instinctively, I took a step towards them, feeling the urgency to protect them. Even as the shadows began to reach for me, waves of energy surged within me, and I held the photograph tight. You won't take them. The air transformed, swirling fiercely around us. I felt the ground tremble, as if the very roots of the earth were retaliating against the darkness. The shadows recoiled, desperate, but I stood firm, summoning every ounce of strength. As the children burst free, the shadow let out a horrid wail that echoed across the clearing. The darkness twisted, contorted, and began to dissipate, shrinking back into the earth. I closed my eyes tightly, feeling the rush of energy wash over me, enveloping the clearing in a beautiful warmth. When I opened my eyes, the children were gone, but the air felt lighter. The darkness had lifted. My neighbor collapsed to the ground, catching his breath. We did it, he whispered, his voice shaky. But somewhere deep inside, I knew the darkness wouldn't be gone forever. We had merely forced it back, just temporarily. There would always be shadows lurking behind the joy, waiting for moments of despair to reclaim their grip. I took a breath, the weight of uncertainty settling heavy in the air around us. I hadn't really escaped, only delayed what lay in wait for us. As he stood, the uncertainty of our victory loomed heavy. Glancing back at the remnants of the treehouse, I felt the seriousness of our encounter wrap around me. There would be many questions left unanswered: the nature of the darkness, the fate of the children, and the struggle that awaited us. But for now, I knew a sense of peace had settled around the woods. I took my neighbor's arm, both of us looking forward into the murky path ahead. "Where do we go from here?" I asked, the uncertainty tinged with a glimmer of hope. He shrugged slightly, his expression both resolved and haunted. "We keep moving," he replied softly, almost contemplatively. "But we remember." And with that, we walked back toward the neighborhood, not without a lingering sense of unease. I knew I could never forget the children or the shadows that had danced between us. They would stay with me, an ever-present reminder of something profound that lay just beneath the surface of everyday life, trapped in whispers, longing to be remembered.